October 23, 1935, 10:15 p.m., Palace Chop House, Newark, New Jersey. The smell of stale beer and expensive cigar smoke hangs heavy, a thick curtain over the mahogany tables. At the back, in a dimly lit booth, sits Arthur Flegenheimer, better known to the world as Dutch Schultz. He is a man who built an empire on numbers and illegal booze, but tonight he looks like a man drowning on dry land. His forehead is slick with sweat. He's counting money, his fingers twitching. Click. The sound of the men's room door opening is the last thing the world hears before the silence of Newark is shattered. Two men walk in, no masks, no hesitation. The first blast of a .45 caliber handgun rips through the air, followed by the rhythmic, mechanical roar of a rust-pitted shotgun. Dutch is hit in the side. He doesn't die, not yet. He stumbles toward the bathroom, clutching his stomach, his blood painting the checkered floor. To understand how the beer baron of the Bronx ended up bleeding out in a Jersey diner, we have to look back at the one man he couldn't break. A man who watched the white mobs and the corrupt cops from the brownstones of Harlem and decided he would never bow. 3 years earlier, 125th Street, Harlem. The air in Harlem during the Depression was different. It smelled of coal dust and fried fish, but beneath that, there was the electric hum of the numbers. It was the poor man's stock market. Bumpy Johnson, a man with a quiet voice and eyes like flint, stood on the corner of 7th Avenue. He watched Schultz's trucks roll in like an invading army. "He thinks he owns the sidewalk," Bumpy whispered to his lieutenant. "He forgets who built the street." Schultz had a reputation for madness. He once hung a man by his thumbs on a meat hook just to watch him squirm. But Bumpy wasn't a man who moved out of the way. The tension was a physical weight. The Dutchman wanted the Harlem lottery, and Bumpy was the only wall standing in his way. The decision was made that night. Bumpy would not negotiate. He would fight. The consequence? A war that would turn the gutters of Upper Manhattan red. As Dutch lay dying in Newark, his feverish mind kept returning to one name. But it wasn't a friend he was calling for. It was the man who had predicted this very end. November 14th, 1932, 02:00 a.m., an apartment on St. Nicholas Ave. The room is silent, save for the scratching of a pencil on paper. Bumpy Johnson sits under a single yellow bulb. On the table are thousands of tiny slips of paper, the dreams of Harlem. People bet pennies to win dollars. It was the lifeblood of the community. Bumpy knew that if Schultz took the numbers, he took the soul of the neighborhood. Schultz sent another message to the policy banks in the Bronx, Stephanie St. Clair, the Queen of Harlem, said from the shadows. She was elegant, fierce, and currently under siege. "They're breaking legs, Bumpy. They're calling themselves the new owners." Bumpy didn't look up. He was calculating the logistics. Schultz had the firepower of the Italian mob behind him and a small army of Irish hitters. Bumpy had a handful of loyalists and the loyalty of the people who lived in the tenements. "Dutch is a loud man," Bumpy said softly, his voice a low gravel. Loud men trip over their own noise. But Schultz wasn't just loud. He was greedy. He had started taxing the local bankers 50%. When they refused, he didn't go to court. He went to their homes. The atmosphere in Harlem shifted from vibrant jazz to a paranoid hush. You didn't talk in the barbershops anymore. You looked over your shoulder. The decision was a hard one. Stephanie wanted to go to the police. Bumpy knew the police were on Schultz's payroll. If they wanted to survive, they had to move outside the law, even the criminal law. Bumpy started organizing a guerrilla resistance. They began intercepting Schultz's couriers. One night, a Schultz messenger was found in an alleyway near 135th Street. No wallet taken, no jewelry gone, just a note pinned to his chest with a pocket knife. It read, "Harlem is for Harlemites." The war was no longer cold, it was screaming. Schultz was used to people folding. When Bumpy didn't fold, Schultz's ego became his greatest liability. He made a vow to his associates. "I'll kill that man myself if I have to." Schultz's mistake wasn't the war itself. It was thinking that Bumpy Johnson played by the same rules of greed. Bumpy wasn't looking for a payout. He was looking for a funeral. June 8, 1933, 11:30 p.m., a dimly lit back room in the Bronx. The air is thick with the smell of cheap gin and expensive cologne. Dutch Schultz is pacing. He is a short man with a wide chest and a face that always looks like it's about to explode. Across from him sits one of his advisors, a man who knows the streets of Harlem better than Dutch ever will. "He's a ghost, Dutch," the advisor says. "Bumpy knows every fire escape, every basement, every rooftop. You send 10 guys in, 5 come back. It's costing us more than the numbers are worth." Schultz slams his fist onto a wooden crate. "I don't care about the money. I care about the disrespect. Bring him here. Tell him we talk. Tell him I have an offer that will make him a king." This was the trap. Schultz didn't want a partner. He wanted a target. He sent an emissary to Harlem with a white flag. The meeting was set for a neutral garage on the edge of the city. Bumpy knew it was a setup. His men told him not to go. They told him it was a suicide mission. Bumpy went anyway. He showed up alone, dressed in a sharp wool suit, his hands in his pockets. He walked into the garage where Schultz stood surrounded by 6 gunmen. The sound of the city, the distant rumble of the elevated train, seemed a million miles away. "You're a hard man to find, Johnson," Schultz said, his eyes darting. "I like that. I need men like you. Leave the Queen. Work for me. If you want the hit clean, leave it to me. I'll give you the Bronx. I'll give you the power." Bumpy looked at the gunman. He looked at the shadows. He didn't blink. "I don't work for men who bleed the people I grew up with, Dutch. You're a guest in Harlem. And guests eventually have to go home." The room went cold. The hammers of the guns clicked back. Schultz leaned in, his breath smelling of onions and rage. "You think you're a legend? You're a dead man who hasn't stopped breathing yet." Bumpy turned his back, a move of pure psychological warfare, and walked out. He knew they wouldn't shoot him there. Not yet. Schultz wanted him to suffer first. As Bumpy walked into the cool night air, he heard a car engine roar to life behind him. The hunt had officially begun, but Schultz didn't realize he was the one being tracked. August 12, 1934, 03:15 a.m., 145th Street Bridge. A fog has rolled in off the Harlem River, gray and suffocating. A black sedan sits idling in the middle of the bridge. Inside, Bumpy Johnson is waiting. He is holding a heavy iron pipe in one hand and a snub-nosed revolver in the other. He isn't waiting for Schultz. He's waiting for Schultz's top enforcer, Bo Weinberg. Weinberg was the muscle. He was the one who did the clean hits Schultz bragged about. But Weinberg was getting nervous. The special prosecutor, Thomas Dewey, was breathing down Schultz's neck. The Dutchman was losing his mind, talking about killing Dewey, a move that would bring the entire federal government down on the mob. Bumpy knew that a house divided cannot stand. He had spent months whispering into the right ears, planting seeds of doubt among Schultz's men. He didn't need to kill them all. He just needed them to fear each other more than they feared him. "Bo is late," Bumpy's driver muttered. "Bo is dead," Bumpy replied. "He just doesn't know it yet." Suddenly, headlights cut through the fog. 2 cars, not one. Schultz had changed the plan. He had sent a hit squad to eliminate Bumpy once and for all. The quiet of the bridge was shattered by the screech of tires and the staccato rhythm of a Tommy gun. Bumpy dived behind the wheel, the glass of the windshield exploding into 1,000 diamonds. He didn't panic. He moved with a surgical precision that earned him his reputation. He threw a smoke canister, a trick he'd learned from a veteran, and used the confusion to slip into the shadows of the bridge's steel girders. He watched from the darkness as the gunmen searched the car. They were sloppy. They were overconfident. Bumpy picked them off one by one, not with a flurry of bullets, but with single, calculated shots. The consequence of that night was a shift in the underworld's gravity. People realized that Schultz was no longer the apex predator. His clean hits were getting messy. His empire was leaking. Bumpy left one man alive. He told him to go back to Dutch with a message. "Tell him the bridge is closed, and tell him I'm coming for the restaurant." February 1935, a hidden office above a laundromat, Bronx. Dutch Schultz is a cornered animal. The IRS is after him. Thomas Dewey is after him. And Bumpy Johnson is everywhere. Dutch is losing thousands of dollars a day because the Harlem numbers banks have stopped paying his tribute. They've gone underground under Bumpy's protection. Schultz is screaming at a telephone. "I want him dead. I want the whole block burned down." His lawyers are trying to calm him. "Dutch, we have to go on the lam. If you stay here, Dewey will have you in a cell by Friday." Schultz's paranoia reached its peak. He began to suspect his own partners in the commission, Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky. He believed they were conspiring with Bumpy to take his territory. In his mind, it was a grand conspiracy of the sophisticated gangsters against the street brawler. He decided on a desperate move. He would kidnap one of Bumpy's associates and hold him for ransom. Not for money, but for the location of the main numbers vault. It was a tactical error. You don't steal from a man who has nothing to lose but his reputation. Bumpy responded by shutting down Harlem entirely. No booze moved, no bets were taken. The streets were eerily silent. It was a strike. The local shops closed their shutters. The people stayed indoors. It was as if Harlem had vanished. Schultz found himself in a vacuum. He had all the guns but no one to shoot. He had all the greed but no one to rob. He was a king of an empty kingdom. The financial blow was devastating. His legal defense fund was drying up. He realized then that Bumpy wasn't just a gangster. He was a politician of the pavement. People weren't just afraid of Bumpy. They believed in him. Desperate, Schultz made a fatal decision. He bypassed the commission and ordered a hit on Thomas Dewey. It was the one line you never cross in the Mafia. July 1935, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, Manhattan. The room is opulent, filled with the scent of expensive brandy and the hushed tones of men who control the city's destiny. Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky sit at a long table. They are the new breed of criminal, corporate, calculating and cold. Dutch is a liability, Lansky says, cleaning his glasses. He wants to kill a prosecutor. That brings the heat on all of us. We can't have it. And what about the man in Harlem? Johnson, Luciano asks. Bumpy is a businessman, Lansky replies. He stays in his lane. He keeps the peace. Schultz is the one causing the chaos. The commission made a cold, hard choice. They wouldn't kill Schultz themselves, not yet. They would let the war in Harlem drain him. They would wait until he was weak enough to be picked off without a fight. It was a game of chess, and Schultz was the only player who didn't realize he was a pawn. Meanwhile, Bumpy was tightening the noose. He wasn't just defending Harlem, he was infiltrating the Bronx. He began making side deals with Schultz's suppliers. He offered them better rates and less erratic leadership. Why die for a man who doesn't respect you? Bumpy asked a prominent bootlegger in a midnight meeting. The strategy worked. One by one, Schultz's allies began to fade into the background. The Dutchman was becoming an island. He was still dangerous, but he was isolated. The social consequence was a loss of face. In the underworld, once you lose face, you lose your life. Bumpy's theme was loyalty. Schultz's theme was fear. In the end, loyalty is a better insulator against the cold than fear ever will be. While the commission plotted, Schultz was preparing his master stroke. He believed he could fix everything with one final bloody night in Newark. October 22, 1935, the evening before the hit. Dutch Schultz is sitting in his Newark headquarters. He's drinking heavily. He's paranoid, checking the windows every few minutes. He has his bodyguards, Lulu Rosenkrantz and Abe Landau, with him. They are loyal to the end, mostly because they have nowhere else to go. Tomorrow, Schultz mutters. Tomorrow we finish the Dewey problem. Then we go back to Harlem and we burn that son of a bitch Johnson out of his hole. He believed he was untouchable. He believed his legend was greater than the law. But the reality was different. The commission had already sent the word out. The contract was signed. The hitters were already cleaning their weapons in a basement in Brooklyn. In Harlem, Bumpy Johnson sat in a quiet church. He wasn't praying. He was listening. An informant had just told him about Schultz's plan for Dewey. Bumpy knew this was the end. The moment Schultz targeted a government official, the clock started ticking towards zero. It's over, Bumpy told his men. Don't go to the Bronx. Don't go to Newark. Just wait. The city is going to take care of its own trash tonight. The decision was to do nothing. It was the hardest decision for a man of action. To sit still while your enemy prepares his move. But Bumpy understood the strategy of the void. If you aren't there to be hit, the enemy hits himself. The atmosphere in the city was electric. A storm was brewing. Thunder rolled over the Hudson. It felt like the end of an era. The Prohibition days were over, and the wild, unhinged gangsters like Schultz were fossils who didn't know they were extinct. Schultz left for the Palace Chop House at 9 p.m. He thought he was going to a meeting to save his life. He was actually going to his own wake. October 23, 1935, 11:30 p.m., Newark City Hospital. The hospital smells of antiseptic and death. Dutch Schultz is on a gurney. He has been shot multiple times, including a devastating wound to the abdomen, but he won't die. He lingers for 22 hours, slipping in and out of a feverish delirium. A police stenographer sits by his bed, trying to make sense of the stream of consciousness pouring out of the Dutchman's mouth. It is a terrifying, poetic, and nonsensical monologue. "The French-Canadian bean soup," Schultz mumbles. "I want you to pay the beat. Don't let them get me." But amidst the gibberish, he mentions Harlem. He mentions the money. He mentions the Black Prince. Even at the gates of hell, he couldn't get Bumpy Johnson out of his mind. He was obsessed with the man who had outlasted him. Back in Harlem, the news spread like wildfire. "The Dutchman is down!" The streets filled with people. It wasn't a riot, it was a celebration. The weight of Schultz's shadow was finally lifting. Bumpy didn't join the celebration. He stayed in his office, drinking a single cup of black coffee. He knew that when one king falls, another must take his place. And the vacancy Schultz left was a dangerous one. The legal consequence was a massive investigation into the Newark shooting, but the criminal consequence was the total collapse of the Schultz organization. His men scattered like rats. His assets were seized by the commission. The hit wasn't clean, it was a massacre. Schultz's bodyguards were dead, his empire was gone, and Bumpy Johnson was still standing on 125th Street. As Schultz took his final breath, he whispered a set of numbers. Some say it was a code to his hidden fortune. Others say it was the final bet he ever lost to Harlem. November 1935, the Savoy Ballroom. The music is loud, the brass section of the jazz band screaming into the night. Harlem is back to its vibrant self. But there is a difference. The hierarchy is clear now. Bumpy Johnson walks through the crowd. He doesn't need bodyguards with Tommy guns anymore. He has the respect of every man and woman in the room. He had defended the neighborhood against an outsider. He had won the numbers war. He sat down with the leaders of the Italian mob a week later, Luciano and Lansky. They met at a quiet Italian restaurant in East Harlem. No threats were made. No guns were drawn. "The Harlem numbers belong to the people who live there," Bumpy said, his voice as calm as a summer pond. "We can do business, or we can have another Newark. I prefer business." The Italians agreed. They recognized that Bumpy was a tactical genius. They gave him a seat at the table, not as a subordinate, but as a partner. It was a historic moment. A black man in 1930s America had carved out a sovereign territory in the heart of the criminal underworld. The theme of power had reached its conclusion. Schultz wanted power through dominance. Bumpy achieved it through resilience. The cost was high. Years of war, dozens of lives lost, but the result was a decade of relative peace in the Harlem streets. Bumpy became the godfather of Harlem. He took care of the poor, paid for funerals, and made sure the local kids had shoes. But he never forgot the lesson of Dutch Schultz. Greed is a poison that eventually kills the host. But even a king has shadows. And Bumpy knew that the same commission that helped him get rid of Schultz would one day come for him. 1968, 125th Street, Harlem. 33 years after the death of Dutch Schultz. Bumpy Johnson is an old man now. He is sitting in Wells' restaurant eating his favorite meal, fried chicken and waffles. The world has changed. The civil rights movement is in full swing. The old mob is fading. He looks out the window at the streets he fought for. He had survived the Dutchmen, the Italians, and the FBI. He had outlived them all. He suffered a heart attack right there in the booth. He died in the arms of his friends. In the heart of the neighborhood he refused to surrender. The story of Bumpy Johnson and Dutch Schultz isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about the urban landscape, about the clash of cultures, and about what happens when a clean hit meets a dirty reality. Schultz's mistake was thinking he was a legend before he had earned the right. Bumpy let the people make him a legend. Nobody knew. Until it was too late, the old-timers in Harlem still say. They talk about the night the Dutchman bled in Newark and the night Bumpy stayed quiet in Harlem. They talk about the hit that changed the city forever. Dutch Schultz told Bumpy, "If you want the hit clean, Leave it to me. In the end, Bumpy left the hit to the universe, and the universe didn't miss. The war for Harlem left scars that you can still see if you walk down 125th Street today. Dutch Schultz is a footnote in a history book. Bumpy Johnson is a name whispered in the shadows of the brownstones. But tell me, in a world of greed and power, who was the real villain? Was Bumpy a hero for protecting his people, or just a smarter predator in a concrete jungle? What do you think? Would you have stood your ground against a man like the Dutchman, or would you have taken the payout? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the dark history of the streets, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. The next story is already waiting.